Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today's webinar will start shortly. We'll be right with you. Thank you. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Fiber One-on-One, where I want to say get ready for an exciting presentation and an important presentation and something that's very significant for March, which is National Nutrition Month. I want to, Tamar, could you forward the slide to next slide, please?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. No, that's okay. So before we get into today's presentation, I just want to share something about WorkWell. And as I say that, I'm hoping everybody here today has participated in at least one of our programs. But if not, let me just share who we are and what we do and why it's important for you to know who and what we do. So WorkWell NYC is the city's worksite wellness program, and we're here to help you live well and work well. Our goal is to create work sites that make it easier for our employees to live healthy, active lifestyles. And as we all know, health is not just the absence of disease. Health is physical, it's mental, financial, emotional, and we know that health exists on a spectrum. So we're here for you with health and well-being resources and programs to help you move more, eat well, be well, and take action to prevent disease no matter where you are in your health journey. We are also committed to addressing matters of inequity and providing platforms to educate and develop structural solutions to health and wellness, both in and out of work. Next slide, please. So as I shared, National Nutrition Month, March, so important. So today we're going to talk about an important nutrient. But before we talk about the nutrient, I always like to start off any talk when we talk about nutrition is to give you a quick nutrition one-on-one educational seminar. So anytime we talk about food, it's important for us to always recognize that food is our body's energy and that we need it in order for our body to function properly. So food provides essential nutrients such as your carbohydrates, your fats, your proteins, water and minerals and vitamins, and that each of these nutrients are needed in specific amounts in order for our bodies to stay healthy and to work. So it's important for us not to overindulge in any specific nutrient, no matter how healthy it is. And likewise, we don't want to not eat a certain way that we're not necessarily getting in the nutrients that our body requires. So it's important for us to eat a balanced, well-rounded diet in order for us to get all of the nutrients that we need. So one of the nutrients that we're going to be talking about today is fiber. And after today's webinar, hopefully we're going to know what fiber is, what are the types of fibers, there's different types, the health benefits, and there's many health benefits, what foods contain fiber, how much fiber we should be getting in our diet, and is there such a thing as too much fiber? So I want to bring in who's going to be the presenter today, Tamar. And Tamar's here with us. She's a nutritionist, and she's going to really provide a great detailed run through of fiber and why it's important in our diets. But before she starts, I just want to launch a poll. And let me see, where's my poll launch. And my question to you is, fiber is it part of a plant, part of an animal, or is it a part of a plant and animal? What's your thoughts? Oh, great. Thank you. Getting lots of responses.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're going to try and keep you active on the chat and with polls, so stay with us.
All right. And as Tamar correctly said, we want you to be engaged. So please use the chat just to be able to correspond with us. But if you have a specific question, what we're going to ask is that you submit it through the Q&A. So that way we can see that the questions are coming through. And Tamara asks or answers as many questions as she possibly can. Obviously, we're not going to get to everybody's questions. So hopefully during the presentation, many of your questions will be answered. All right, so I'm going to end the poll and let's share the results and let's see what we have. I think a majority of you had indicated that fiber is part of a plant, but we did receive a few responses where it states that it's both plant and animal. So maybe Tamar will be able to provide some highlights on that for us.
Thanks. Thank you, Brenda. Welcome, everybody. So I'm excited to jump right into it. The first question, right? What is fiber? Those of you that answered a part of the plant, you are correct. It is actually only found in plants. So it comes from plants and it kind of passes through our system mostly undigested. And there are a few different types of fiber. We're going to talk about two main ones today. But as a key takeaway, please remember that fiber is only found in plant foods, okay? So the two types of fiber that we're going to talk about today are soluble and insoluble fiber. There's also resistant starch, but that's a little bit more complicated. So we're going to focus on these two types of fiber. The first one is soluble fiber, and this kind of acts like a sponge in that it absorbs a lot of water that's in our gut, right? And with that, it swells and absorbs and turns into this kind of like gel, right? So think of like oatmeal. If you make oatmeal on the stove and you add water or milk, does it shrink or does it expand? Right? When it's in the pot, it's going to expand, right? So when that happens, in our stomach, it turns kind of sticky. And one of the things that gets stuck to it is actually cholesterol. So instead of that extra cholesterol going around and getting deposited in our arteries, it gets stuck to that swollen gel-like fiber. And one of the benefits of fiber, I'd probably say its biggest claim to fame is that it helps us go to the bathroom, right? So with that, it actually pulls the extra cholesterol with it on the way out. So that's soluble fiber. It takes a lot of that water and it swells into that gel. The second type of fiber we're going to talk about is insoluble fiber. This acts more like a bulldozer. This is also what we call that like roughage or bulk for another word for it. And this physically pushes things down and out, right? So both are actually going to promote bowel movements, different types of bowel movements, but it is equally important that we get a good balance of both, okay? So most fruits and vegetables have both soluble and insoluble fiber in different amounts. Up here on the screen, I put up some examples of both, but we want to make sure that we're actually getting a good balance of both. The end goal is to help us go to the bathroom, and getting a good balance helps do both. Okay, so just a quick recap about some of the benefits of fiber. We're going to jump into a few of them a little bit more in depth, but we'll start first with fiber feeds our gut bacteria, right? So 70% of our immune system starts in our gut, okay, with those bacteria, right? You know, we have like billions and billions of bacteria in our gut. They love to eat fiber, right? It keeps them busy. They take the fiber that we eat and they ferment it, and that's what they, need for their energy. Now, this is different than when we eat like probiotics. People eat or take probiotics, and that's actually live active cultures. That gives our bacteria friends, right? That makes them happy in the sense that there are more of them, but the fiber is what they eat for food. And keeping that bacteria healthy makes sure that it keeps us healthy. It also helps prevent gastrointestinal diseases. We are going to talk more about this in a little bit, but one of the main pathways is that our body's making waste. Fiber helps us get rid of the waste. If one of the things our body's trying to get rid of is something like a cancer cell, instead of it sitting there and festering when we're constipated and we're not able to get rid of the waste that our body produces, right? That's when things kind of tend to grow down there. We want to try and move everything along, right? So fiber helps do that smoothly. Lowers our bad cholesterol, right? That's our LDL cholesterol. So that's what gets stuck. When that fiber swells and absorbs all that water, that cholesterol gets stuck to it and it pulls with it on its way out. More dietary fiber has been linked to less chronic disease, right? And this one makes sense because when we think about the foods that are high in fiber, right? And we talked about plant foods. So for example, fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, whole grains, right? Barley, buckwheat, kasha, farro, bulgur, right? Real whole grains, all great sources of fiber. When we eat those types of foods, they also tend to be rich in vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, all of which also have cancer-fighting properties. So people who tend to eat more of those types of foods have less chronic disease. Bulk satisfaction and lower body weight. When we think about that list, right, and we're going to run through that a bunch of times today, fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, whole grains, right? Are any of those foods particularly high in calories? And you can jump in on the chat if you want. I want to keep you guys engaged. Someone wrote absorbed in the chat. But when we think about those foods, they're not that high in calories, right? But so like a big bowl of bean soup, for example, right? How do you feel after a big bowl of bean soup? Full, right? Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Lakana, right? Thanks, Stephen. So you feel full. It's bloated. We'll talk about that too. But you feel full, right? For very low calories. I mean, what's soup, right? Beans, vegetables, and water, essentially. But you feel full. So these are really low-calorie foods that end up promoting that real satisfaction level, right? So if lowering your body weight is a goal of yours, the more fiber we eat, and it swells and absorbs in our stomach, it actually hangs out longer, helping us feel full, right? For very low calories as well. Reductions in BP's blood pressure and hypertension, right? So when we think about that list, and I told you we're going to run through it a bunch of times, fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, and whole grains, right? Those foods are also really high in potassium, which is a mineral that naturally helps lower our blood pressure. So it makes sense that the more of these types of foods we eat, we'll tend to have lower blood pressure as well. Reduced risk of certain types of cancer. This is going to be like breast and colorectal cancer, primarily from the cereals, those whole grains, vegetables, and beans. Those have been linked to lower risks of cancer. Reduced risk of type 2 diabetes and lowering blood glucose levels, our blood sugar levels. We're going to talk more about that on the next slide. But this is our, long list of why fiber is so important and how it's linked to our overall health. In terms of our blood sugar control, right? So if we take it back a few slides and we talked about how that soluble fiber swells and expands in our stomach, that energy gets released into our bloodstream very slowly and very consistently, right? Now, if we have type 2 diabetes, do we want our energy to be slow and steady, or do we want those big peaks and sharp valleys? Slow and steady or high and low? Thanks, Wanda. Thanks, Victor. Yes, awesome, right? Slow and steady. That's what we want to look for. So the more fiber we eat, it takes so long to get released into our bloodstream that it actually ends up with that slow and steady release of energy, right? So in terms of blood sugar control, this actually helps us manage our diabetes, right? That's what we want. So this is how fiber helps slow the rate of absorption. And that also that big swollen gel-like structure, anything else you eat kind of gets stuck in that matrix. So it gets broken down much more slowly, right? So we're actually going to avoid those big spikes and those steep crashes, okay? Now, with bowel health, a little bit more about this. We talked about how fiber helps us go to the bathroom, right? So it helps alleviate constipation. In reducing the risk for colorectal cancers, there's a lot of cell turnover, right? If one of those things is a cancer cell lining our colon, but we're going to the bathroom every day getting rid of that waste, it doesn't have time to kind of grow, right? Now, the other benefit, and this is preventing the formation of diverticula. This is when we have chronic constipation and you go to the bathroom and it doesn't come out so easily and you really have to push and you have to strain, right? That pressure ends up creeping back up into your colon, and that pressure can cause little tiny tears. And those little tiny tears can turn bigger into like little pockets. And one of the things that gets stuck in those little pockets can be feces. And it's really, really painful. And then it can get inflamed and infected, and that diverticulosis turns into diverticulitis. And if anyone's experienced it, it is very, very, very painful and uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to have surgery to correct it. It's very uncomfortable. To prevent it, right, we just have to increase our fiber so that we're not straining and we're not constipated and we're not pushing as hard. So the more fiber we eat with the water, and we're going to talk about water shortly, it helps induce, much smoother bowel movements with much less strain. Make sense? Okay. So moving along, this was a really interesting study that came out of Penn State. I'm a Rutgers alum, so they're, our rivals, but I will say it was an interesting study that they took 58 participants for 5 weeks, and they split them up into 4 groups. 1, they gave an apple. Group 2, they gave applesauce. Group 3, they gave apple juice with fiber powder. And group 4, they didn't give anything to. That's our control group. And so they gave everyone, in that group, each one of those things. Then they let them go to a buffet and let them eat as much as they wanted. And after they ate, they measured a few different things, right? One was satisfaction, right? Their satiety, and one was levels of fullness. So type it in the chat. What do you think? Which group do you think felt the most full? But keep in mind that they all have the same amount of fiber. The apple, the applesauce, or the apple juice without it fiber. Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of apples. Okay, apple juice with the added fiber. Okay, cool. So it looks like a bunch of people chose the apple group. And you're right, it is the apple group, right? So now, why do you think it's the apple group, right? If they all have the same amount of fiber, how are they not feeling the same level of fullness? Isn't that interesting? It's the same amount of fiber. So you have to take it down, to the next level. Yes, Heidi said it. Awesome. Thanks, Heidi. Your body takes time to break it down. Yes, who said that? Yvonne, right? Chewing is more satisfying. Think about eating an apple. You take a bite, you have to chew it, you have to turn, take a bite, chew it, right? That process takes a few minutes. So when that happens, it takes about 20 minutes for our brain and our stomach to get on the same page, to be like, hey, you know what? I'm actually filling up. So you're allowing that communication to start. If you've ever eaten applesauce, 2 spoons and it's gone, right? Apple juice, whoop, 2 slurps and it's done. So when you really take the time to chew your food with the apple, right? It's a lot more satisfying and a lot more filling. So, someone put more roughage in the apple, but the fiber was the same in all of them. So keep that in mind, that it's not necessarily the amount of fiber, it's the action of chewing, which is what, is the most important here in terms of feeling satisfied and feeling full. So I thought that was a really interesting study. We'll address this again in a few slides when people ask about like fiber supplements, right? So this is a perfect example of why we really want to try and get our fiber from food first rather than powders and supplements. So here's that list again. I told you we'd bring it up a bunch. Fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds. Our whole grains, we have bran, barley, bulgur, farro, buckwheat, couscous, rice. There's a lot more on here. I do want to emphasize that when it comes to fruits and vegetables, it is the whole fruit and vegetable, the pulp, the peel, the flesh, the stem, the seeds, the leaves, all of it, right? It's all got that fiber. Okay, so take a look at this list and remember it, because I told you we'll reference this a bunch. We have our next poll, Brenda. Now that we know what fiber is, do you think most Americans get enough fiber in a day? Brenda, are you able to launch that poll?
I'm trying. Hold on, hold on. Okay, now I got it. Sorry, everyone.
I'm seeing a bunch of no's in the chat. I will give you a few more seconds to answer. Okay, great. So yeah, well, looks like we're pretty much on track with agreeing that no, we do not get enough fiber. Good. So especially when you hear that long list of how fiber benefits us so greatly, right? So let's take a look at the guidelines. These are the most current, the dietary guidelines from 2020. And the suggestion is for women 51 and older, 22 grams. For men 51 and older, 28 grams. Comes out to about 14 grams per 1,000 calories. We tend to eat about 2,000 calories in a day. This is still too low, right? 22 grams of fiber, that's not enough, right? We really start seeing the benefit of fiber closer to 30 grams a day. On average, the typical US intake comes to about 15 grams. But I'm gonna be honest, I think that's overreported. I don't think most people get 15 grams. I think it's even lower than that. So, I think we can do a lot better. Heidi asked, what does 30 to 38 grams a day look like? And that is a fantastic question. So for example, a cup of black beans is 15 grams of fiber, right? So a cup of black beans, you can add that and mix that into your quinoa with your dinner, with chicken, with meat, with fish, whatever you're eating for dinner. Chia seeds, 2 tablespoons. You could throw that into your yogurt. You could throw it into your smoothie. You could throw it into your oatmeal. That's 10 grams of fiber. Almonds, an ounce or like 23 almonds, like a fistful of almonds. That's 3.5 grams of fiber. So you could do 2 cups of beans, or you could split it up all throughout your day, right? But we really want to try and aim for fiber from our food and a nice variety. Get it from everything. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so I will take a second to talk about oatmeal and fiber. And I think that this comes up as one of like the top examples when you ask people like, what is fiber? Where do we find fiber? And it comes up a bunch. Now, I just want you to pay attention to the nutrition facts label on the oatmeal. This is for a half a cup of dry oatmeal. And that's a lot. That's a big serving of oatmeal, okay? Now, when you take a look at the fiber, it's 4 grams, right? 2 grams of soluble fiber, 2 grams of insoluble fiber. And that's like almost as much as a handful of almonds, right? And this is a big serving of oatmeal. So it's really not that much, right? Oatmeal has some fiber, not a ton of fiber. Now, it doesn't mean we can't eat it, but it means that we could definitely make it better, right? There are things we can add to our oatmeal to enhance it, to add more fiber, right? So when we look at things that we can add to our oatmeal, what comes to mind? Type it into the chat. Okay, awesome. Flax seeds, ooh, good. Whoever said flax seeds, give me 1 second. It's the next slide. We have oatmeal with blueberries. Chia seeds, steel cut oats. We're gonna have similar amount of fiber. Fruits, nuts, good, good. Fruits, nuts, seeds, perfect. Almonds, awesome. Strawberries, flax seeds, awesome. Okay, man, you guys are good. This is great. Oh, peanut butter. Yes, I love whoever said that. Awesome. Peanut butter, awesome. Almond butter, great things to stir in. You can crunch them on top. Awesome. For those of us that said flax seeds, chia seeds as well, great sources of additional fiber. They don't really taste like anything, but they have so much added benefit in that you'll get good omega-3s, those fatty acids that we need for our brains, for our eyes, for our hearts. Flax seeds are also a good example of how they have both insoluble and soluble fiber. To get the best benefit, you want ground flax seeds. Our body can't really break them down if they're whole. 1 tablespoon is 2 grams of fiber, right? So you can throw in 1 tablespoon of flax, 1 tablespoon of chia seeds. You could do 2 of each. They really don't taste like anything. It's easy to throw into a salad, easy to throw into your oatmeal, your yogurt, whatever you're eating. And the added benefit is that they also might, can contribute to lower LDL, HDL levels, lower LDL level, lower our overall cholesterol levels, our LDL, the bad one, right? Okay, so that is flaxseed. Next, we have a question that comes up a bunch about juice versus fruit. And this kind of comes back to that apple juice example. When we are drinking juice, right? If anyone's ever made orange juice before, how many oranges do you have to squeeze to make a cup of orange juice? What do you think? 1, 2, 3, okay, 6, 5, a million. Yeah, right? That's what it feels like. If you've ever made it, it really does feel like a million. Too many, right? Now, if I were to give you a bowl of oranges, how many oranges could you eat? 1, 2, right? 2 at most if it's like peak winter and they're great. And then that's it, right? You kind of get full. But when it's juice, when you're squeezing it for juice, all you're really getting is the water and the sugar, right? There is no fiber. What fills us up when we're eating the actual fruit is the fiber, right? The flesh, the pulp. Now, if you get orange juice with the pulp, it's not the same thing, right? You know that. It's not the same thing as eating a whole orange. So what we want to aim for is really consuming that whole fruit, right? For the fiber in it as well. Same thing back to our blood sugar levels, right? If it's just the water and the sugar and the juice, our blood sugar levels are going to spike. But if we can get the whole fruit, we're not going to see that big spike in our blood sugar levels. So a really strong emphasis here, right? Moving from liquid to liquid, we really want to talk about water, right? Water, water, water. Wherever we are, we should always be drinking more water when it comes to fiber. It's the one condition that fiber needs to work, right? Without it, that's when you're going to see all the bloated, the gassiness, the constipation, and that could come up, right? People say, I don't eat beans, I don't eat cabbage, I don't eat Brussels sprouts, they make me too bloated, crampy, gassy, right? Super common. When we don't eat fiber, and then we eat a huge salad with Brussels sprouts and beans and chickpeas in it, and all of a sudden, we feel like a balloon. You're giving our gut bacteria so much to work on all at once, right? They've got a lot to get through. So one of the things they're going to release is all that gas. Now, when you increase the water alongside more and more fiber that you're taking in, you'll notice that it starts to balance out. Start slow, right? Let our gut adapt. So if you don't eat any fiber and then you're like, oh, I heard this Work Well seminar and now I want to get more fiber in. Start slow, increase it daily, right? And with every increase of fiber, make sure you're also increasing your water. And then you'll notice that it's not going to have the same effect on you anymore. So give our gut time to adapt and just increase fiber with an increase of water. Now, another thing, we briefly mentioned this before was supplements. Fiber pills, fiber powder, you can get them in a bunch of different forms. Now, one thing I will say is, a cautionary tale, these supplements are not regulated by the FDA. So we don't really know 100% what's in them. They have proprietary blends, they don't legally have to disclose what's in them. But if I'm eating a can of beans, if I'm, munching on a bag of kale, I know what's in it, right? I'm going to know the fiber source there. So, it's a little bit safer. Now, also when we eat beans, for example, right? I'm a big fan of beans, if you couldn't tell. When we eat beans, right, you get that whole umbrella effect. You get protein, you get potassium, you get calcium, you get fiber, right? You get all of the benefit from the beans, not just that really concentrated source of fiber. So it's like, any of those green supplements. Oh, it's got 30 vegetables inside a little tiny green capsule. If it sounds too good to be true, I'm going to tell you it's too good to be true, right? Doesn't mean that it's not, got some benefit to it, but it's not the same thing as actually eating all those greens, right? We don't want to look for those isolated nutrients. When you eat the real food, you get that whole umbrella effect. So that's the takeaway, right? We want to eat real foods first. Now, in addition to supplements, something we do have to pay attention to. when we're eating fiber from natural sources, right, our whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and seeds, nuts, right, there's no limit to the amount of fiber that you can intake. Eventually you'll get full, right, and you'll want to stop eating, but there's no limit, in terms of counting fiber. But when it comes from supplements, that really isolated source, that concentrated source of fiber, there is a limit, right? Too much fiber from these supplements can actually compete with what's binding what, right? So too much fiber can end up binding things like calcium, iron, zinc, chromium, copper, and it can cause a deficiency, right? And we don't want that. And too much fiber in terms of these supplements also can have all those negative side effects like the gas, the abdominal bloating, the cramping. Remember, we talked about increasing slowly, right, with the water. So we really want to get, that slow and steady increase with the water in conjunction, right? And giving our stomach natural time to adjust. So we do want to pay attention to too much of the supplements and focus more on the real foods. Okay. So with that, these are my references that we, will happily send out. Any questions? Let me know. Thanks so much to everyone that typed into the chat. I'm seeing a bunch of good things in here, so I'm happy that we have some time to jump through it.
Yeah. And Tamar, let's see. I'm looking at the Q&A and I'm seeing quite a few questions. Is there a list of veggies that have both soluble and insoluble fiber?
Oh, that's a great question. A list on hand? No, but I'm sure that there's easily.
Yeah, I was going to say today, following today's webinar, we will send you a follow-up email with the presentation. So I will make sure I include a list. But yeah. I'm going to do a little promotion here. We have the 5-a-day Your Way challenge that's currently going on. And I'm hoping everybody here will register for that challenge because these are the pieces of information that you will receive on weekly emails and a list of foods that are high in fiber you will receive. So I would recommend for you to register for the challenge and you will receive information regarding such foods. But I will send the list following today's webinar. Another question is chia seeds good or bad if too much or if you consume too much?
Chia seeds, I'd say the serving size is also probably 2 tablespoons. Great source of fiber, of protein, of the omega-3 fatty acids. They do absorb a ton of water. So, you can either add it to your water. If I'm going to say if you put it in oatmeal, it'll kind of absorb a lot of the liquid in the oatmeal. So it does best in water. How's that?
Right.
Hemp parts, yeah, you can add that to that list too. Hemp parts, the seeds, flax.
And we have an oatmeal question.
Yeah.
Is steel cut oatmeal better than regular oatmeal?
So steel cut oatmeal refers more to from when it's harvested to how much it's flattened out, right? So steel cut's going to be the closest form to the groat or the oat, and then it gets kind of steamrolled, and then you'll get, the man with the top hat, that's our old-fashioned oats, and then it gets steamrolled again, and then you have our 5-minute oats, and then it gets steamrolled again, and you have our instant oats. So the steel cut oats, and if you've ever had them, they have a little bit more like a chew or a bite to them. So those are going to be our least processed. So I prefer them. I like that texture a little bit more. But the amount of fiber is essentially the same.
Okay, trying to look.
Almost a crunch. Yeah, I know. That's why I like them. I like the crunch in there.
Okay.
What other questions, Brenda?
There's another question regarding cholesterol. Do both types of fiber absorb cholesterol?
So the insoluble fiber doesn't absorb, right? It doesn't use the water to absorb. That one, it kind of just acts more like, remember that bulldozer, it just physically pushes the bulk out. So a soluble fiber is really the one that's linked to lower cholesterol levels.
And another question I thought was interesting, and I don't know, somebody's asking why are both lettuce leaves and fiber lower in fiber? And spinach leaves, I'm saying it's fiber. Why is lettuce and spinach lower in fiber?
That is a good question. It could be also just in terms of like density, like they're so light, you really have to eat a lot of them to get a decent amount of fiber. Whereas like physically, comparing it to something like, like a zucchini, right? It's just got more bulk to it.
Right. But that seems to be it in terms of questions. A lot of the questions are repeating. So I'm going to submit, or I'm going to post some additional polls because we want to hear from you. So one is knowledge. And the question is, did you learn anything new or useful with today's presentation? Great, and thank you as always for responding. This truly helps us with our programming. I'm going to give you a few more minutes to be able to respond, and then I will finish. All right, so I'm going to end the poll.
I'm glad to see it.
Yay, thank you. And again, I'm going to push our Fiber Day your way if you want to hear more about fiber as well as the other nutrients received from fruits and vegetables. So I'm going to minimize, and I have one other poll that I do want to share with you, and that is your program satisfaction. How would you rate the overall quality of this program?
Did you launch that poll, Brenda? I don't.
It's not launching. Let's see.
Okay.
Launch. I'm not too sure why my poll is not launching. All right, let's try it.
Do you want me to try?
Yeah. Okay, I think I got it.
Okay, I see it now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing a lot of responses in the chat, and I want to say thank you. I'm glad that many of you found the information to be informative. All right, so I'm going to end the poll in a few minutes or a few seconds. And I will share the results.
I'm trying to get through a few of the questions in the chat also.
All right. So it doesn't end there. We still have so much more to share, and that's regarding
upcoming events.
Our upcoming events. So we want to hear from you, and the reason being, once we hear what's important for you, we can really create programs that resonate for you. So we're asking everybody to take our post survey. Hopefully you've all received it in emails. You may have seen it in flyers around your agency. Please take a moment to fill that survey for us. So again, we can hear from you and we can know what we're doing right. And if there's any places that we need to make any improvements to get you come into our program. So thank you for that. In addition, we have our Let's Move NYC Step Challenge. It's almost here. Teams are already in place. So if you haven't registered yet, please register at nyc.gov/Let's Move NYC. It's our biggest program, and it truly captures or it brings together the entire city. So don't be left out. Participate, get your teams ready, and let's get ready to move NYC. We also have an amazing 3 evenings of art is Life Gallery exhibit, where we get to celebrate each and every one of us in terms of art and expression. So please, if you get an opportunity, come see the creativity of your fellow city employee. We have visual arts, performances, and literary works centered around the theme Building Understanding. So for more details, please visit on.nyc.gov/ Art is Life. Again, it's an amazing event. This would be our second year of doing this. And I can share the first time we did it, it was breathtaking. Number one, to see the creativity, and again, bringing the community together where we can celebrate what we all do best, and that's express ourselves in special ways. So please take the chance to come. We will be presenting on March 26th between 12 and 9, March 27th, again between 12 and 6. So please come and visit and celebrate what we do. Be the first to know. I always like to be first online, especially when they're giving out something new. So this is a great opportunity for you to sign up to our mailing list for exclusives, to know, to be the first one to hear about these special events that Workwell is doing. Use the scan code or the QR code, let me get on right, where you could be the first to know and enjoy our mailing list. And I think we have more. And this is the post survey. Again, this is truly important for us in our programming. So if everybody here today, and there were so many of you, so if everybody here today can take the time to scan the QR code, pull up the post survey so we can hear from you. Thank you. And as always, there are many ways that you can connect with Workwell NYC. You can email us, you can contact us on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, and we have a website. So please reach out, look for our programming. This is just one of many offerings that we do for the City of New York. And we look forward to hearing from you. And thank you for participating in this program today. Thank you.
We have two participants who raised their hands. If you have questions, if you want to type them into the chat quickly, we can try and address them.
Definitely.
Can you put the QR code back up? Yes.
Oh, I think a question just came in, fresh or frozen?
Fresh or frozen. The amount of fiber will be the same. Fresh in season, frozen out of season.
And also, one of the things to think about, if you live by yourself, maybe having frozen where it allows for a longer shelf life, maybe something that's important for you and may be valuable. So it also depends on your individual circumstance.
Absolutely. Question about whole wheat or veggie pasta, also a great question. I will say from a fiber standpoint, it shouldn't be your only source of fiber. So you really want to look for more like adding vegetables to your pasta for fiber rather than choosing a high fiber pasta. That makes sense. Canned vegetables or fresh vegetables. I would say also, if you can, fresh vegetables, some of the nutrients get lost in the can. If canned is all that's available to you, I would choose canned vegetables over no vegetables. But when we can, fresh or frozen are going to really retain a lot more of the nutrients.
And one added thing with the canned vegetables, a lot of times the sodium content may be a bit high. So one tip would be maybe to put it in a sieve and run cold water over them to remove as much of that sodium as possible.
Good. Carbohydrates and diabetes. Audrey, I would look for things like the seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp hearts. You can add that to something like yogurt. Berries are going to be your best bet because they have the most fiber and the least amount of sugar. Super diabetes friendly.
Yeah. And remember, diabetes doesn't mean that you have to stay away from carbohydrates, but you want to just combine them maybe with a protein food item. So as Tamar said, there are maybe healthier or better choices, but you don't want to avoid altogether. But thank you. We love this.
Oh, is this the QR code? Whoops.
All right, so we want to again say thank you for joining us. We will
Thanks,
definitely
everyone.
have more nutrition webinars in the future. All right.